Things are tragic for Troy Aikman, now at 58 years old. Even at 58, Troy Aikman carries himself with the same poise that defined his Hall of Fame career. The three-time Super Bowl champion and current ESPN Monday Night Football analyst still looks the part of America's team quarterback. Sharp in his broadcast booth, articulate in his analysis, commanding in his presence. But beneath that polished exterior lies a more complicated story, one marked by the enduring consequences of a career that ended too soon and the haunting questions that refuse to fade with time. The making of a champion's burden. Before we examine what haunts Troy Aikman today, it's essential to understand the price he paid for immortality. Aikman didn't just play quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, he survived it. For 12 seasons, he stood in pockets that collapsed like dynamited buildings, absorbing punishment that would end most careers before they began. He was the field general of the NFL's most dominant dynasty of the 1990s, leading Dallas to 3 Super Bowl victories, while his body accumulated damage like interest on an unpaid debt. Those championships weren't won with finesse alone. They were forged in the crucible of the NFC East, where every snap carried the threat of career-altering violence. Aikman learned early that quarterbacks in his era weren't protected by rules or referee whistles. They were protected only by their offensive line and their own willingness to stand tall while 300-pound defenders tried to separate their souls from their bodies. The statistics tell only part of the story. 165 career touchdown passes, 90 wins in the 1990s, 3 Super Bowl victories. What the numbers don't capture is the accumulating toll, the 10 documented concussions, the degenerative back condition, the countless subconcussive impacts that occurred in an era when getting your bell rung was considered part of the job description. The Philadelphia Nightmare. Throughout his career, no team inflicted more systematic punishment on Troy Aikman than the Philadelphia Eagles. It wasn't just football, it was something approaching vendetta. Eagles defenders seemed to view hitting Aikman not as a tactical necessity, but as a moral imperative, a way to test whether Dallas's golden boy had the stomach for real football. The hits came in waves, season after season. Defensive end Jimmy Jones delivered one of the most notorious, a helmet-to-helmet collision that left Aikman wandering the field like a man searching for lost keys. The impact was so severe, it produced an audible pop that resonated through the stadium and into living rooms across America. Aikman crumpled, rose unsteadily, then collapsed again, his brain desperately trying to process what had just happened. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern, a systematic campaign to break not just Aikman's body, but his will. Every trip to Philadelphia became an exercise in survival, every snap a calculated risk. The Eagles defenders knew what they were doing. They were trying to shorten a Hall of Fame career one concussion at a time. In the end, they succeeded. The tragedy isn't just that Aikman endured this punishment, it's that the league, his own team, and the broader football culture encouraged him to. Getting back up after devastating hits wasn't just expected, it was glorified. Aikman's toughness became part of his legend, but toughness, as he would later learn, has its own expiration date. The concussion that changed everything. January 15th, 1994, NFC Championship game. Cowboys versus 49ers, a game that would define Aikman's legacy and, tragically, his future. Early in the second quarter, 49ers defensive end Dennis Brown caught Aikman flush with a devastating hit that sent shockwaves through Texas Stadium. Aikman's head snapped back violently, his eyes rolled back, and for a terrifying moment, it seemed as though America's team had lost its quarterback not just for the game, but forever. What happened next became one of the most shameful chapters in NFL history. Aikman was taken to a dark hospital room at Baylor University Medical Center, where Agent Lee Steinberg found him trapped in a hellish loop of confusion. Every few minutes, Aikman would ask the same questions. What happened? Did we win? Are we going to the Super Bowl? Each time, Steinberg would patiently explain that yes, they had won. They were going to the Super Bowl, and Troy had played brilliantly. Minutes later, Aikman would ask again, his short-term memory wiped clean by the impact that had scrambled his brain. The most tragic part wasn't the injury itself, It was what happened 2 weeks later. Despite being hospitalized for a severe concussion, despite showing clear signs of traumatic brain injury, Aikman started Super Bowl 28 against the Buffalo Bills. He played magnificently, throwing for 273 yards and 2 touchdowns in a dominant victory. But the cost of that performance would echo through the rest of his career and into his current struggles with aging and health anxiety. The NFL, the Cowboys, and even Aikman himself celebrated his toughness. In reality, they should have been mourning the beginning of the end. The medical cover-up that betrayed a franchise icon. Perhaps the most infuriating aspect of Aikman's story is how his own organization failed him when it mattered most. In 2016, a New York Times investigation revealed that the Dallas Cowboys had deliberately omitted Aikman's concussion data from NFL-sponsored studies conducted between 1996 and 2001. During that period, Aikman suffered at least 4 documented concussions, none of which were reported to league researchers. This wasn't an oversight. It was a calculated decision by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organization to protect their image at the expense of their franchise quarterback's medical history. While the NFL was conducting studies that would supposedly provide a full accounting of all concussions diagnosed by team physicians, the Cowboys were actively hiding the fact that their Hall of Fame quarterback was accumulating brain injuries at an alarming rate. The irony is breathtaking. Jerry Jones, who would later call for more CTE research, deliberately withheld data from his own star player. The same owner who built his dynasty on Aikman's arm chose to sacrifice his quarterback's place in medical history to avoid bad publicity. It's a betrayal that cuts to the heart of the NFL's relationship with player safety, a relationship built on exploitation disguised as partnership. For Aikman, this cover-up represents something even more painful than physical injury. It's evidence that the organization he bled for, the team he led to 3 championships, viewed his brain health as less important than their public relations strategy. The Cowboys had a chance to contribute valuable data to concussion research that might have helped future players. Instead, they chose silence. The cancer scare that nobody talked about. While the football world was focused on Aikman's concussions, a different health crisis was quietly unfolding. In 1998, during the height of his career struggles with head injuries, Aikman discovered a dark spot on his shoulder that would change his perspective on mortality forever. What began as a minor concern during a family vacation in Hawaii quickly escalated into something far more serious. At the urging of his sisters, both nurses, Aikman visited a dermatologist who delivered devastating news: stage 2 melanoma, cancer. At 32 years old, with his football career hanging by a thread due to concussions and back problems, Aikman was now facing a battle that made even the most violent NFL defenses seem manageable. The diagnosis could have been catastrophic. Stage 2 melanoma, if left untreated, can spread throughout the body with lethal efficiency. But Aikman was fortunate. The cancer was caught early enough to avoid chemotherapy or radiation. Surgery removed the malignant tissue, and his prognosis was excellent. Yet the psychological impact lingered long after the physical healing was complete. For nearly 2 decades, Aikman kept this diagnosis largely private. While he did a few interviews with Dallas media outlets, the story never gained national attention, a stark contrast to the constant coverage of his concussions. It's a telling reminder that athletes, even Hall of Famers, are human beings dealing with the same health anxieties and mortality fears as everyone else. The difference is that they're expected to do it while maintaining the facade of invincibility that comes with professional sports stardom. The migraine mystery that took decades to solve. Adding another layer to Aikman's health struggles was a condition that plagued him from childhood, but wasn't properly diagnosed until he was 40 years old. For nearly 35 years, Aikman suffered from chronic migraines without understanding what was happening to his body. The symptoms were classic: severe throbbing pain in his temples, nausea, acute sensitivity to light and sound. But Aikman, raised in the tough-it-out culture of Texas football, never sought medical attention. His father's influence was clear. Real men didn't see doctors for headaches. They took aspirin and got back to work. This mentality followed Aikman throughout his playing career, where admitting to headaches in a sport defined by head trauma was seen as weakness. When you make a living getting hit, almost everyone has a headache. Aikman would later reflect, "It was taboo to complain about head pain when your job description included absorbing violent collisions from men who weighed 300 pounds and ran 20 miles per hour." The breakthrough didn't come until 2006, 5 years after his retirement, when his broadcasting career with Fox Sports required constant air travel. The flights triggered severe attacks that left him feeling miserable for hours at a time. Finally, at age 40, he saw a doctor and received the diagnosis that explained decades of suffering: chronic migraines. The treatment was transformative. Imitrex provided relief that he'd never experienced, but the delayed diagnosis represents another tragic element of Aikman's story. How many games did he play through blinding pain? How many of those minor concussions were actually migraine episodes triggered by head trauma? The questions haunt not just Aikman, but anyone who understands the interconnected nature of brain health. The retirement that came too soon. March 7, 2001. The Dallas Cowboys waived Troy Aikman one day before he was due a $7 million bonus and a 7-year contract extension. For the first time since 1989, America's team would begin a season without their franchise quarterback. Aikman's response was swift and final. On April 9, 2001, he announced his retirement, ending a career that should have continued for several more years. The official reasons were health-related, persistent back problems, and the cumulative effect of 10 documented concussions. But the real story was more complex and more tragic. Aikman wasn't just retiring from football, he was surrendering to the inevitable consequences of a sport that had systematically dismantled his body over 12 seasons. At 34, Aikman was younger than Tom Brady during his final Super Bowl victory. He was younger than Drew Brees when he won his only championship. He was younger than Peyton Manning during some of his best seasons. But while other quarterbacks of that era played into their late 30s and early 40s, Aikman was done. The sport he had mastered him in return. The press conference at Texas Stadium was heartbreaking for those who understood what was really happening. Aikman, fighting back tears, spoke about the competitor in him wanting to continue, but his family weighing heavily in his decision. "I just can't do it anymore," he said. "If it was just me, then I think it would be a little easier to try to go on." The tragedy isn't just that Aikman's career ended prematurely, it's that everyone involved pretended this was a normal retirement. The NFL celebrated his toughness while ignoring the systematic destruction of his neurological system. The Cowboys honored his legacy while covering up the medical data that might have helped future quarterbacks. The broadcasting pressure. Every Monday night, Troy Aikman sits in ESPN's broadcast booth and performs what amounts to a very public neurological exam. Millions of viewers watch not just his football analysis, but his mental acuity, his memory, his ability to process complex information in real time. It's a unique form of pressure that few professions can match. The irony is devastating. The same cognitive abilities that make Aikman excellent at his job, sharp memory, quick analysis, clear communication, are exactly what CTE and other brain injuries attack first. Every smooth broadcast is a small victory against the forces that may be working against him. Every forgotten name or stumbled word becomes potential evidence of decline. Recent seasons have intensified this scrutiny. Social media users have noted changes in his appearance, particularly around his eyes, leading to speculation about everything from simple fatigue to more serious health concerns. While these observations may be meaningless, they reflect the impossible position facing former NFL players in public roles. They're performing under a microscope, with every misstep potentially attributed to brain damage. The pressure extends beyond individual broadcasts to his entire career trajectory. How long can he continue at the highest level of sports broadcasting? When will ESPN executives begin to wonder if his best days are behind him? When will viewers start noticing decline that may not even be related to his football career? These questions create a layer of professional anxiety on top of personal health concerns. The biohacking battle against time. In recent years, Aikman has become almost obsessive about health optimization, embracing cutting-edge treatments and technologies in what appears to be a desperate race against time. His social media posts read like dispatches from a medical frontier: therapeutic plasma exchange, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, red light treatments, cold plunges, advanced neurological testing. This isn't vanity, it's survival strategy. Aikman has watched too many of his contemporaries succumb to the delayed effects of football-related brain trauma, Junior Seau's suicide, Mike Webster's dementia, the growing list of former players diagnosed posthumously with CTE. Each new case serves as a reminder of what might be waiting for him. The most telling moment came in 2013, when Aikman voluntarily underwent 3 to 4 hours of comprehensive neurological testing at the Center for Brain Health in Dallas. The results were encouraging. His cognitive function tested well within normal ranges. "They were blown away," he said. "It was really peace of mind for me." But the fact that he felt compelled to undergo such extensive testing reveals the anxiety that drives his daily decisions. His recent treatments at Next Health, a Los Angeles longevity clinic, represent the latest chapter in this ongoing battle. Therapeutic plasma exchange, essentially an oil change for his blood, is designed to reduce inflammation and slow the aging process. It's medical science meeting biohacker desperation, a wealthy former athlete's attempt to buy time against an uncertain future. The tragedy isn't that these treatments are ineffective. They may be quite beneficial. It's that Aikman feels compelled to pursue them at all. While his peers from other sports age gracefully, former NFL players live with the constant knowledge that their bodies are ticking time bombs, their brains potentially rewiring themselves toward dementia and despair. The CTE shadow that haunts every day. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of Aikman's current situation is the uncertainty that colors every aspect of his life. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy can only be diagnosed after death, which means that every living former NFL player exists in a state of medical limbo. They may be perfectly healthy, or they may be in the early stages of a degenerative brain disease that will eventually rob them of everything they are. Aikman has chosen not to join the thousands of former players suing the NFL over concussion-related injuries, a decision that speaks to both his personal circumstances and his character. His brain testing has been encouraging, his symptoms minimal, but the absence of current problems doesn't guarantee future health. CTE can lay dormant for decades before manifesting its most devastating symptoms. The statistics are sobering. Boston University's CTE Center has found evidence of the disease in the brains of 34 out of 35 former NFL players examined. While this sample is skewed toward players who were already showing symptoms, it provides a glimpse into the likely reality facing Aikman's generation. The sport they loved, the careers that made them legends, may have been slowly killing their brains with every snap. This uncertainty affects every decision Aikman makes. How much should he plan for the future? How long can he continue broadcasting? What legacy will he leave for his daughters? These aren't typical aging concerns. They're the unique anxieties of men who traded their long-term neurological health for short-term athletic glory. The family factor. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Aikman's story is how his health concerns affect his relationship with his two daughters. They represent both his motivation for staying healthy and his greatest fear about the future. What father wants his children to watch him slowly lose his memory, his personality, his essential self to a disease that may have been preventable? Aikman has spoken about how his daughters are more proactive about sun protection than he ever was, a direct result of his melanoma diagnosis. They remind him to wear sunscreen, to limit his exposure, to take the health precautions he ignored during his playing days. In many ways, they've become his caregivers before he's even shown signs of needing care. But it's the unspoken concerns that carry the most weight. Every forgotten name, every moment of confusion, every slightly offbeat conversation becomes potential evidence that the disease process has begun. His daughters, now adults, understand their father's history and the risks it entails. They live with the same uncertainty he does, wondering if the man who raised them will gradually disappear into the fog of dementia. This dynamic creates a cruel reversal of traditional family roles. Instead of Aikman protecting his children from life's harsh realities, they find themselves protecting him, monitoring his health, encouraging his treatments, preparing emotionally for a future that may include watching their legendary father become a shadow of his former self. The broader tragedy. Aikman's story, tragic as it is, represents just one thread in a much larger tapestry of football-related health crises. His generation of NFL players, those who played in the 1980s and 1990s, are now entering their 50s and 60s, the age when CTE symptoms typically begin to manifest. They're living time bombs, each one a potential reminder of the sport's hidden costs. The statistics are sobering. Studies suggest that former NFL players are more likely to suffer from depression, dementia, and suicide than the general population. They die younger, struggle more with cognitive decline, and face unique challenges in aging that aren't fully understood by the medical community. Aikman's health anxiety isn't paranoia. It's a rational response to documented risk. What makes this tragedy even more profound is how preventable much of it was. The NFL had access to research about brain injuries dating back decades, but chose to suppress or ignore findings that threatened their business model. Players like Aikman absorbed punishment that could have been reduced by rule changes, better equipment, and more honest communication about risk. The cover-up of Aikman's concussion data by the Dallas Cowboys represents a microcosm of the league's broader failure to protect its players. While claiming to prioritize player safety, organizations systematically hid evidence that might have led to meaningful reforms. The result is a generation of former players living with the consequences of decisions made in corporate boardrooms rather than medical facilities. A legacy still being written. At 58, Troy Aikman's story is far from over. The chapters ahead may be defined by continued health, professional success, and personal fulfillment. Or they may chronicle the gradual effects of a disease process that began decades ago on NFL fields across America. The uncertainty is both terrifying and oddly liberating. It forces him to live each day with intention while preparing for multiple possible futures. What's certain is that his legacy extends far beyond his 3 Super Bowl victories or his broadcasting excellence. He's become a symbol of his generation's struggle with the hidden cost of football glory. A reminder that every touchdown pass and championship celebration came with a price that's still being calculated. The true tragedy of Troy Aikman's situation isn't that he may develop CTE or other brain-related health problems. It's that he and thousands of other former players must live with that uncertainty, knowing that the game they loved may have set in motion forces they can't control or fully understand. They're living the consequences of decisions made by people who prioritized entertainment and profit over human health and safety. Today, Troy Aikman continues his daily battle against time, uncertainty, and the invisible forces that may be working against his brain. His morning routine includes treatments and supplements designed to optimize cognitive function. His workout regimen incorporates exercises specifically chosen to support neurological health. His diet emphasizes foods that reduce inflammation and support brain function. These aren't the typical concerns of a 58-year-old enjoying retirement success. They're the calculated responses of someone who understands that his past career choices created ongoing health risks that require constant vigilance. Every clear day, every sharp broadcast, every moment of normal cognitive function represents a small victory in a war he may be fighting for the rest of his life. For now, Troy Aikman continues to call Monday Night Football games with the same precision that once made him legendary. But the real game he's playing is against time, disease, and uncertainty. A contest where the rules are unclear, the opponent invisible, and the final score unknowable until it's too late to change the outcome. This is the true tragedy of Troy Aikman at 58. Not that he's currently suffering, but that he must live every day with the knowledge that the suffering may yet come, a delayed consequence of choices made decades ago when he thought he was simply pursuing glory on football fields across America.